Okay. This week's learning is sponsored by Gary Mizrahi and Sally Haber in memory of their mother-in-law, Shafia Batzakia, who passed away earlier this month. Okay, we're going to talk about, we've been talking about an Erub and carrying and so on. Today we're going to talk about a situation where there's no Erub. Right, so all the things we're going to talk about today are in a place where there's no Erub and you're concerned you might be carrying one of these things. We're going to talk about a number of articles of clothing or something like that that could potentially be considered carrying. It'll kind of explain itself as we go. But the key thing to remember is everything that we're talking about now is in a case where there's no Eruv. Would there be an Eruv? So all that we're going to talk about is allowed, and often not going to be an issue. You would only do this, or you'd only worry about it if there was no Eruv. So the first thing that he says is any kind of tachshit. Tachshit is like a jewelry, an adornment, or an accessory. Shehu rafoy. That's what we would call rafoy. Rafoy is very loose and weak. It's not gonna. It's very likely to fall off, to disconnect in some way. So he says you can't go out with that on Shabbat in a non-eruv place, because what's the concern? The concern is it'll fall off. You'll pick it up and you'll walk with it. And as we said, you can't walk in the public space for amot. That's from the Torah, and even in a Carmelit, the Rabbanan place. Midrabanan, you can't do that. So therefore, the concern is if it's easily detachable, if it easily falls off, so it's a problem. So I'm not talking about the standard necklace that most people wear, or bracelet or ring, because those don't fall off too easily. But there are some things that are less enduring, and if they are easy to fall off and continually need to be retied and replaced back. So those are things that are a problem, and you should not wear those things in a public space, and therefore on Shabbat. So he says now, he talks about what about certain things that are jewelry, but that also could serve another purpose, right? So he says, like, let's say you have a necklace, right, and the pendant is like a key, right? So he says there's a machloket between Sfaradim and Ashkenazim. Ashkenazim are lenient, and Sfaradim are more strict, and therefore we should not wear the key around the necklace or something like that. However, I will say, I think he gets to it later, I've seen, in the days before we had an Eruv in Brooklyn, a number of the men used to wear tie clips or belt clips or belt buckles with keys on them, because they needed to carry the key. So therefore they were relying on that opinion. I would say that this is one of the reasons why Rabbi Kassan and many other rabbis in the community push to have an Eruv, because at the end of the day, if you don't have an Eruv, people are going to be lenient in another area. So if you don't like that leniency, you're going to end up finding people are going to be finding other leniencies or worse and not keeping certain mitzvot. So that's why they pushed as hard as they did for an Eruv in Brooklyn, and that's why they did the same thing in Deal. So the primary places where we live in Brooklyn and Deal have Eruv, so a lot of what we're saying doesn't really come into play. But let's keep going. He says, let's say you have something that you wear, not for the sake of being warm or to be covered, but rather you wear it so that your other clothing doesn't get dirty or wet. So we're talking about a rain hat, a raincoat, galoshes, or something like that. All of those are allowed. Even, he talks about here, let's say in the winter, you have a winter coat, and then you have like a rain overcoat on top of the winter coat, right? Like you could say, I don't need the coat, right? But even if it's to keep you dry, it's fine. So too, you'll see, I always found this interesting, you'll see that many of the yeshivish people wear a plastic cover on top of their hat, right? Normally the hat is what keeps you dry, but I guess when the hat, you want to protect the hat, so they put a plastic cover on top of the hat, so that's allowed as well. He even talks about some people, I haven't seen this in a while, says, what about wearing a coat without tucking your hands in the sleeves. I don't know if you've ever seen people do that, but some people, for whatever reason, put the coat simply over their shoulders, but not in the sleeves. So he says, he recommends against it because it's easy for the coat to fall, and then you go and you pick it up and you walk and so on, but it's not forbidden. It's not forbidden to wear a coat that way. He talks about a kerchief, right? A woman's kerchief on her head. Around her head, it's fine, but he actually says it's forbidden to wear it around the neck. Now, he changes that and says that if in some way it's attached to the clothing, so then it's okay. And I would say today, where the many people are wearing the face mask or the bandana or something of that nature, of course those are allowed. Those are clothing. There's a very real need, and even though you might come to take it off, it's definitely an article of clothing, and people should know to be careful if they're wearing. Excuse me. Oh, very tired this morning. If they're wearing some kind of, what we call PPE today, the protective equipment, the personal protective equipment. So a person has to be, you can wear it on Shabbat, but it has to be careful not to take it off and then walk somewhere with it in Reshut Rabim or something like that. Okay, next things that he talks about is gloves or mittens, right? Someone puts gloves or mittens, which there's a question as to whether or not you could wear gloves or mittens, because in the days where we used to shake people's hands, right, what would people do? You take off the glove and you shake the person's hand barehanded. So there's some thought about not doing that, but at the end of the day, we say it's okay, you can do it, and today we don't shake hands anymore, so I guess that problem takes care of itself. The next thing that he talks about is in many of our clothing, we'll find that we have spare buttons, right? Very often, what you'll see happen is you buy a new suit, coat, or pants, or something like that, and they sew in to the clothing an extra button or two in case your main one falls off. You'll have a reserve. So is that carrying, right? That is not essential to the clothing. But at the end of the day, we say it's okay because it's considered. Excuse me, I'm very tired this morning. It's considered batel, nullified to the rest of the garment. It's not a problem. You don't have to take it out or anything like that. So too, any kind of labels or something like that. You may have in the inside of the garment a label, a tag. Today if you take it for Shatnez testing, so it says tested for Shatnez, none of those labels are problematic. You don't have to take them out, at least not for the carrying on Shabbat problem. Yeah.
What about the loose buttons that they put in your pocket in a bag, extra buttons in it?
That I would take out. That I would take out because that's not attached. So I would say if they throw in anything into the pockets, a card, like sometimes you buy from a store, and they stick in, a card that says, either a free tailoring at this tailor or or something like that. Yes, you should take that out. Again, all this is in a place where there's no Erub. If there's an Erub, so there's no problem. But actually, we did talk about the buttons being muktzeh, right? Meaning the buttons that are not attached are muktzeh, because what purpose do they serve? They only serve the purpose of being sewn on to the clothing, which you can't do on Shabbat. So they become muktzeh. So the buttons should be taken out before Shabbat. Okay. The next thing that he has is a watch, right? May a person wear a watch? So he says you're allowed to wear a watch. He says, however, there's different kinds of watches, right? So really, he's primarily talking about a wristwatch. So a wristwatch is not a problem, no matter what kind of thing that it is. Does he talk about? I forget. I don't think he talks about it. But a pocket watch is a little different, right? And you don't see too many people wear the pocket watches anymore. But a pocket watch, it would kind of depend, right? If you wear the pocket watch in a way that has some kind of ornament to it, which they, like you used to see people with those fancy chains and so on and so forth. So I guess you could make a case for that that's okay because it's attached to the clothing. But if it's not, then it would not be okay, and we wouldn't carry a pocket watch without an eruv. With an eruv, it's fine. So that's that. Next, it says yesh omrim shemutar lachayalim latzet bediskit zihui hataluya b'sharsheret saviv tzavaram ksheyesh tzorech bekach be'et milui tafkidam habitchonit. So here he's talking about what in the military they call I think dog tags. The metal. It's like a metal necklace or chain, and then attached to it is the person's name and identification number or something like that. They wear those in the field, for purposes of if something happens to them. So those are allowed because first of all, it's a type of jewelry. It stays on, and there's a necessary purpose for it. Although he does say if you're not in active service, so perhaps not wearing it, meaning if you're not serving as a soldier at that time, then take it off and put it away. Says someone who has difficulty seeing without his glasses, so he wears them all the time. No problem to wear them in public. He says, but reading glasses, which you take on and off, you can't walk out with them into the public space. Because reading glasses are meant to take on and off, and people take them off and they put them in their pocket and so on. So those you can't. You have to leave them where you need them, one in the house, one in the shul, or something like that. Of course, if you have bifocals, right, where the lower half is made for reading and the upper half is made for more distance viewing, so you don't take those off, you wear them all the time, and it's not a problem. Okay. מותר לחולה עיניים לצאת לרשות הרבים בשבת ומשקפיים כהות שמגינות על מאור עיניו מאור השמש. He says someone who has trouble with his eyes, that when he walks in the public, it hurts his eyes to see if he's not wearing some kind of protective glasses, sunglasses, or something like that. He's allowed to wear those glasses in public. Of course, very famously, right, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef wore glasses like these all the time because he had his eyes squinted a lot because of the reading that he did, or maybe genetic, I'm not sure, but I think it had to do with the reading that he did. So he would wear the glasses all the time, so it would be okay. It says, "Aval im markivet hamishkafayim rak kedei lagen min hashemesh ve'eno sovel min ha'einayim and latzet bahem l'reshut rabim." He says, however, he quotes an opinion here which says, if you only wear them kind of like normal sunglasses, says you shouldn't wear them in the public because you take them on and off. You don't wear them all the time, and so on. Also, something to consider that a lot of people have, although a little less popular today, is like a clip-on piece that goes on top of the glasses where you take them on and off. I don't know if you've ever seen that for the like a sunglass clip. So he says, so those are problematic and shouldn't be done. He says, however, he does say that anyone who does do so, there are opinions that allow it, and therefore he would say that if you did it, there's what to rely upon. He's just recommending not to do it.
Rabbi, the clips or the sunglasses? There's what to rely on the clips or the sunglasses or both?
Both. מותר לצאת לרשות הרבים בעדשות מגע ובלבד שיתרגלו עיניו להן שאין לחוש שיסירם ברשות הרבים. You would imagine this would be obvious, but I'll say it anyway, which is contact lenses, right? Many people wear contact lenses. So he says wearing contact lenses is not a problem unless, he says, if you're not used to wearing the contact lenses and you continually take them in and out and so on and so forth, and there's a concern that you would wear them in the public space and then take them out, then that could be a problem. So something to think about. Okay, now we're going to talk about certain types of, since we got into glasses, which there's a medicinal purpose for. We're going to get into some other kind of what you would call prosthetics, things that help people that have physical issues. So he says a person who limps, he's lame in some way or something like that. He's not able to walk without a cane or a crutch. He's able to walk with that cane in the public space. But if he could walk without it, and he's really just using it to help himself along, then he shouldn't do it. So it really depends on, do you really need it? If you really need it, then they will allow you to wear it. But if not, so not allowed. So he also talks about here, it's in the footnote if I remember correctly, the same thing holds true with a wheelchair, right? A wheelchair, so if the person can't walk without the wheelchair, which usually that's the case, most people don't get in a wheelchair unless they really need it. So he's allowed to be pushed in the wheelchair, but not so simple and not so easy. But basically, we try and find a non-Jewish person to push him in the wheelchair. That's the ideal situation in that case. And again, another reason why we're very happy that we have an Erub, because there's plenty of people who need that and that are able to come to the Bet Knesset using a cane, a walker, a wheelchair. These are all situations that in the halacha present challenges. You may have seen, today, the prevailing way that you see it is a lot of the elderly have like a walker with wheels on it. They can kind of walk without it, but it really helps them. Sometimes they even have a little seat that they sit down in if they need to. So these are things that could potentially be problematic in a non-Eruv situation, which is why we work hard to have an Eruv. Someh, a blind person, he is not allowed to use that walking stick in public. Since he's able to go out into the public without it, it's just helping him a little bit. It says, however, there are those who have written that if it's really, really difficult, he really can't go out without it. Then he's like we just said about the person who needs the cane, so he's allowed. The guy's going to fall, he's going to hurt himself. We don't want that, so therefore they allow it. So that's something. Someone who is missing any kind of limb, leg, arm, something like that, hand. What we call a prosthetic. So too a person who has dentures, right? The dentures come in and out. You can wear dentures, no problem. So we talked about this earlier when we talked about microphones and electricity, but a person who wears a hearing aid is allowed to wear the hearing aid on Shabbat, provided you deal with all the electrical issues which we talked about. But basically, provided it's something that you generally don't take in and out, and we're not concerned that he's going to pop it in, pop it out, then he's allowed to do that. When I say pop it in, pop it out, I mean in the street, in public. If he takes it out at night to go to sleep, that's not what I meant. Says, let's say you're walking in the street and there's no eruv, right? And what do you see on the floor? You see a sidur, you see a chumash or a page of a chumash or something like that. That's it's not kavod for that item to be on the floor. But what are you going to do? How do you pick it up? He says, asur lo letaltel et hadaf. He says you can't pick it up. Aval im yesh lo b'ma lechasot oto, ra'ui lachmir lechasot oto. If you could cover it in some way to protect it or something like that. It says b'im over v'ro'eh ne'erot stam ve'eno yodea mahen eno tzarich afilu medere chumra v'chasidut v'kanim hen divrei Torah. He says, let's say you see papers on the floor, right, and you're not sure, maybe they are religious documents or not. You're not obligated to check. He says, what if you see a piece of bread lying on the floor? אם חברו לידו ימסרנו לחברו עד שיסלקנו צדדים, ואם אין הוא לבדו יסלקנו ברגליו פחות מ400 ימות לפוש, וכל זה כשיש כזית, אבל כשאין כזית. So he says you could kind of like push it along on the side, kick it, but not much. You can't do 4 amot. So you could do a little, then maybe your friend does a little, then somebody else does a little, because you don't want to leave bread lying on the floor. If there's a way to take care of that, that's fine. But this is only talking about a substantial piece of bread. I'm not talking about something that you would, crumbs that you would put out for the bird. I'm talking about like something like a real slice or loaf that you would eat, that someone would eat. And again, all this is assuming someone would eat it. Often when you're finding it on the floor, no one's eating it, and then I would just leave it.
But this is all non-Erub. If you see a book on the floor,
obviously non-Erub. Non-Erub.
Not Erub.
Anything with an Erub, anything that we're saying today in an Erub, you could pick up. Right, so this is a case that happens a lot, especially if you cut it close on Friday afternoon. Right, you're getting home on Friday afternoon and it's late. Right, and now you have money in your pocket. So what do? You don't want to carry the money home, right? Because you can't carry the money on Shabbat because of Erub. So he says, so what do? This is all if there's no Erub, right? If there's Erub, as we said before, since it's already in your pocket, you could leave it there, and then when you get home, you dump it out, in an unusual way. But let's say there's no Erub, right, and you're concerned about carrying. He says, so what do? You can move it, but not 4 amot at a time, right? So you move it 4 feet, let's say, right? And then you leave it for 10 minutes. And then you move it another 4 feet, and then another 10 minutes. Or you have somebody else alternate with you, right? If you have someone else with you, if you're with your child, your wife, or something like that, you could each go a couple of amot. And that's something they used to do with I don't think he says it in here, with the Sefer Torah. Right, they would hand it off, like pass it from one person to the next, so no one was carrying it for Amot.
But Rabbi, isn't that the loophole that you could do with anything? In other words, a button. You have the button. Can you put it down for?
Well, we
take it 3 amot and.
Technically, yes, but we're saying yes to money because you're going to be, we're concerned you're going to carry it, right? Whereas, because you're not going to leave the money there. Right. Whereas if it's something that's not really valuable, so just leave it there. Like if it's a button, it's a button. Get another button next week. But if it's it's $100, it's $1,000 or something like that.
Right.
Our expectation is the person is not going to leave it there so easily. So we need to give the person some out, some possibility to be able to.
What about the daf of Chumash that you see? In other words, why that wasn't
also because of the so you can do the move it little by little or hand it to somebody else, but the reason is because there we're trying to protect the chumash, which is valuable, or even the piece of bread, which is interesting because we consider food to be valuable. So same type of thing. He says, "V'yesh machmirim shetzarich davka lashevet b'intayim o laniach hachefetz hakaber karka kshigev beto shu reshut yachid yizrok hakis kelachar yad lebeto kadei shelo tiyeh hachnasa gemura." So he says, and there are people who will tell you that when you're doing this, taking it slowly, step by step, you actually have to sit down or sit it down every, couple of feet so that each time it's a new movement. It's not like you hold it, stop, and then keep going. You have to actually place it down. And they also say that when you actually get into your house, you kind of have to enter it into the house, because now you're taking it from a public space to a Reshut HaYachid, right? So you have to enter it where the distance isn't the issue anymore. Now it's just a transfer from one domain to another. So he says you have to do that in a backhanded, backward sort of way, right? Put it in your mouth, kick it with your feet, or something that's not a normal way to move it into your house, and then just leave it. וישנה עוד עצה, שבביתו ללא שיעצר כלל, ונמצא שליח נביא פשוט רבים, לביתו שהוא רשות היחיד, יזרקנו כאחר יד, כגון מכתפו או לאחריו. So he has another possibility. He says there's an opinion that would say that if you never rest, right? Like if you run the whole way, there's no stopping. So then that makes it a little less of a problem. And if you can, if you're in good shape and you could run the whole way, so that's another thing that potentially someone could do in order to make that work. Okay, so all that was, it's your money, it's in your pocket. He says the next case is matzah arnak im kesef b'Shabbat. But let's say you find just on the street, it's not yours, but you find a wallet with money on it on Shabbat. You can't pick it up, even though you say, hey, it's mine, I could get it. Now, if I leave it there, someone else is going to come along and take it. Too bad. You can't take it. He says, even to do this this little transfer, you can't do that if it's not yours. So he says it's all allowed. What we said before was all allowed because we know if it's your money, it's going to ruin your Shabbat, right? Like if you had to leave $100,000, all your credit cards, your driver's license, so on, you're going to lose yours. You're going to be sitting there in Friday night in shul saying, what a dib I was, what a that, and we don't want you having a terrible Shabbat. But if it's not yours, you just found it, so it's not yours. You didn't own it, so no leniency there. He says, and who knows? Maybe you come back after Shabbat and you get it, great. But other than that, you're not. If it's not yours, you're not allowed to pick it up. Even kicking it, the 4 amos, anything like that, not allowed. Okay, mitzvah lahadam l'mashmesh begadav erev Shabbat samuch l'chashecha shelo yeh behem davar she'asur la'atzet behem b'Shabbat. Because of everything that we said today, it's a good practice to, and actually he calls it a mitzvah, on Friday afternoon to check all your pockets before you leave for Shabbat, right? Before you go to shul, check, see, do I have anything in my pocket that I don't need? Perhaps you're going to take it out and you'll carry it to the Shut Rabim. Or even if there's an Erub, you might have things that are muktzeh that we don't want to be carrying. It says perhaps you have an Erub and you're going to go to a place, you're going to come to the boundary of the Erub and not realize it. So for all these reasons, this is something to be careful about. And for us, where we have an Erub, so it's great that we have the Erub, which allows us and prevents us from committing certain sins, but there's a downside to an Erub, which is it's easy to forget the mitzvah of carrying, right? Because you've kind of, for most of your circumstances, not carried. You're not concerned about carrying anymore. So you kind of forget that you can't carry. So it's important to learn about the Erub every once in a while, to talk about the Erub, to make sure people understand that there's a concept called carrying, so that if they're in a place where there's no Erub, right? Often we'll go away on a vacation or a business trip and we'll be away somewhere. You're in, Tulsa, Oklahoma, they may not have an Erub there, right? Happens to be more and more places these days have Erub because there's Jews in a lot of different places. And that's great. It's fantastic that we have it because it makes, if there's an Erub, the whole point of the Erub is to make ourselves aware of the mitzvah and that you can only carry in some places and not in other places. So that's great. But without that, we shouldn't do that. We should be careful to do it. Anyway, I see Edward, so I know it's time to end today's class. In memory of Shafia Batzakia, thank you to Sally Haber and to Gary Miz for sponsoring today's class. We'll now. Have a great day, guys.
You too. Be well.
Hazak Baruch. Have a good day.